Hi everybody, you're listening to the Khandaan podcast by the You Podcast team, a bi-weekly podcast revisiting the movies of Amir Khan, Salman Khan and Shah Rukh Khan.
Every show we pick a random year from 3 decades of collectively 300 films the Khans have done and let our listeners vote which movie we should talk about. So it's entirely up to you.
Pick a team, make a vote, take us down nostalgia lane, punish us, or make us reassess a movie we dismissed.
We love the Khans, most of us, sometimes. And we would love for you all to be part of our Khandaan, because when it comes to the Khans in Bollywood, nothing else really matters.
Hi and welcome to Khandaan podcast. I'm Asim and I'm joined with Amrita and Sujoy. Hi guys.
Hello.
Hi.
This is still kind of the warm-up episodes. We're kind of still doing the debut years of the Khans, and this week we're talking about Salman Khan's debut, Maine Pyar Kiya, which again officially is not his debut, right? But has anybody seen, or does anybody have fond memories about Biwi Ho To Aisi, or does anybody even want to talk about that movie?
Well, I've seen it, but not really fond memories, or I exactly don't remember what Salman was doing in that movie. He plays a very minuscule character. That movie was more about Rekha.
Yeah, something like that.
So I saw Biwi Ho To Aisi much later, and I think Salman Khan's voice was dubbed in it. So, and he was not happy. I don't think he got into a fight with the director, and he didn't want to be a part of it, or the director insulted him. I think I was reading this somewhere on Anna Vetticad's breakdown of Salman Khan's career. So I do not have fond memories. I think if you're Rekha like Sujoy, then you've probably seen the movie. So otherwise there's no reason, I would say. He's playing like a minor character. I think he's playing the Devar or something like that. Anyway,
yeah.
So Maine Pyar Kiya, let's consider that Salman Khan's debut. This is a funny one. I think normally I take copious notes whenever I'm watching a movie, especially when I want to talk about it and review it, but I get so engrossed whenever I watch Maine Pyar Kiya, I just forgot to take notes, so I don't have much on it, except that I love this movie. So it came out in 1989, directed by Sooraj Barjatya, starring Salman Khan, Bhagyashri, Alok Nath, and a whole bunch of other people. Rima Lagu is in it again. And
Lakshmikant
Berde, yeah. I mean, this movie kind of came out when the Barjatya's brand, the Rajshri brand, wasn't really doing great, right, at that time. And I think they were mostly known for kind of family TV dramas,
They used to make these kind of, they weren't B movies, but they weren't A movies either. So this is weird sort of
devotional kind of movies, like
wholesome movies,
very religious.
Exactly. Yeah, like I don't think they made Jai Santoshi Ma, but they made like movies that would sort of fit in with that kind of ethos. I think they did make some complex movies, like they made like Balika Vadhu, which I think was a pretty complex movie that sort of ended up in a very traditional sort of space, because that's where they usually ended up anyway. But they were looking at stories that deviated a bit off the mainstream. So they made that movie with Amitabh Bachchan. I can't remember the name of it, but it has Nuthan in it, and
Saudagar.
he plays Saudagar. That's right, and he plays this sort of scheming. What is it, like a honey trap guy? Like
no, the sugar guy who he gets the nectar from palm trees, and then he asks Nuthan to cook good for him. So
yeah.
Okay. I thought you guys meant that was kind of his job, like he was trapping women, but he was actually trapping honey. Actually, no women, but actually.
No,
but that was his end game. So he wanted to become rich to marry this woman, and to become rich, he had to marry Nuthan, because Nuthan was the best, sort of cook in the village who could make sugar.
What?
Yeah, it's a very bizarre movie.
Okay, great.
And he just wears like this, like this lungi clad sort of
and red socks.
Machiavellian, and sort of like sort of unwashed, oily-looking character that was very against his type at that point in time. It's a pretty interesting choice for Bachchan in that particular era of his films. I kind of like it.
And they also produced Abod, which was Madhuri Dixit's debut, right, in 1984. It was kind of dealing with, was it Child Brides or something like that?
I haven't actually seen it, so I have no idea.
Yeah, it looked terrible. I had no, like, I didn't want to watch it. But anyway, so I think the brand was kind of, it wasn't top billed or anything like that, but they kind of, their son, Sooraj Barjatya, wanted to make this movie, and they kind of put all hands on deck and gave him kind of a major push. And it was a major payoff for them. I mean, this movie was probably the biggest hit of 1989, right? If it wasn't the top grosser, it was probably number one or two, right?
And it was also, like, I was watching it, and it sort of struck me just how this is the prototype for pretty much every single movie they've made since then. Like, even when they tried to go very ultra modern with Main Prem Ki Diwani, it was literally the same movie. They just like put in like that weird animated parrot and then had Kareena Kapoor take off all her clothes. But basically, it is the same movie over and over again with the same cast of characters. And they sort of, like, he came up with a winning concept that worked within the parameters of his production company, and then he just went to town with it, which, cheers to him.
Yeah. It was the top grossing Bollywood movie of the year and the highest grossing Indian film of the 1980s. And it also counted among the top 10 successful films of Indian cinema of all time. And the film's soundtrack sold over 10 million units, which is probably a lot for back in the day. And that's probably official sales. How much pirating used to go on in that time doesn't even account for the sales numbers in a way. And it's funny because when I was watching this, I realized the whole soundtrack is copied. Like the whole sound, every song pretty much is stolen, right? I mean, maybe some are stolen from a source that I don't know, but pretty much most of the songs, I was like, after I watched this movie, I told you guys I was humming the theme song, and my wife asked me why am I suddenly singing so much Stevie Wonder, and I was like, no, it's not Stevie Wonder, it's so you might end up humming Stevie Wonder or Europe or Art and Garfunkel, so yeah. For a soundtrack that's so popular, it's a pretty much a straight ripoff. But yeah,
I kind of wonder if this was like basically a reflection of the kind of music that Sooraj Barjatya was listening, or whether he just went up to the music director and was like, "Hey, like, what are the kids listening to these days? I want you to make that."
Yeah.
I think Barjatya himself was a sort of a younger kid back then, and he was like, kind of possibly sick and old with the older people in the cinemas, and sort of we were talking about this in the Kamat Se Kamat Tak episode as well, as these were the younger ones who were kind of breaking into the industry, and these were going to be leading the younger generation of actors in the industry. So they kind of consciously wanted to bring that into the music as well, so like bring all the Western influences and with all the influences from Stevie Wonder and Europe, as you said.
Yeah, this was actually, that's a good point. Like, this was actually that first, like, right now we talk about Bollywood all the time as like a seat of nepotism, and how you have like every year, like a new crop of star kids comes into filmmaking, and they're either actors or directors or whatever. But this was actually the first generation to actually do that, right? You had Mansoor Ali Khan, you had Sooraj Barjatya, you had Salman Khan, Amir Khan, like all the Khans. And then in the 90s, that just continued with Vinod Khanna's sons, Amitabh Bachchan's sons, Rakesh Roshan's sons. Well, that was 2000s. But basically, it just sort of continued from this particular crop, right?
I have to say, like, it seems like when we talk about nepotism now, it feels like it's a sure shot success. Kind of, daddy's funding it, and I'm going to have a huge marketing push. But both Maine Pyar Kiya and even Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak, they were no guarantees. I mean, it almost, like, the nepotism almost feels like has a sense of desperation, because these banners, these filmmakers at that time couldn't even attract a big star. So in a way, because it was a young story, a young kind of couple they were looking for, they just, picked some young guys that were around them. Because, like, if you look at the struggle, like I was talking about in the Qayamat Se Qayamat podcast, is that Amir was, he was going to rickshawalas and putting his poster on here. And even if you read about Salman Khan and how he got casted for Maine Pyar Kiya, it isn't like, Alia Bhatt getting a launch or Varun Bhatt getting a launch, right? It's very kind of grassroots, kind of scrambling together. It's not that Salim Khan was a big name at that moment where he could just push his son through, like, give my son a starring role. And even these movies weren't like sure shot bets. They were breaking the formula. They were trying to do something new, and that they became such big hits. It's just funny because, nepotism is such a big deal now, but at that time, I don't know if it had the same connotation of what nepotism is now, because we've had, and I really think the current form of nepotism started with Hrithik Roshan more than anything. And that's what we then see as, nepotism, which is much more closer to what, a Varun or an Alia or whoever else gets, or even a lot of these producer sons that get a launch. They are very much trying to emulate the Hrithik Roshan launch, and not really the Amir Khan or Salman Khan launch in a way. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
I think in that argument, in that context, I think when Harman Baweja was launched with Love Story 2050, I think that was he followed that template to the T with, the way he articulates his words, he says his dialogue, and the dance and everything was like he was trying to ape Hrithik Roshan, and obviously we know, like now, that definitely does not work. And I guess everybody aspires to be Hrithik Roshan in a way. All the newcomers that try to sort of bank on that sort of hero image, I suppose. Because obviously Salman Khan and Amir Khan were launched in the 80s, so it's kind of like a long generation back for actors who are getting launched now. Hrithik Roshan is still like the hero of children who were in the 90s and who were seeing movies then.
I think it's also a question of money. Like, by the time Hrithik made his launch, the whole industry had changed. Like, they were dealing with a level of success and a level of revenue that I don't think that they were doing in the 80s. So if you look at the launch of Sanjay Dutt or Deol or Salman and Amir even though, like Sanjay Dutt and Sunny Deol and what's the name of that other guy, the love story?
Kumar
Gaurav. If you look at Kumar Gaurav, these were all, they were explicitly launched by their influential fathers. Like Dharmendra produced Betab and Sunil Dutt produced Rocky and like all that kind of stuff. But even then, they were dealing with essentially tiny movies. Or even with Rishi's launch in Bobby, it wasn't like a multinational glitzy affair that like Kahona Pyar Hai. It was still like, like there's a girl and a boy and maybe they go to a farm somewhere and, or else they'll spend all their time walking through a forest. But the ambitions of those movies was very small. They were just trying to show like, here's my kid. He can dance a little. He can ride a horse. He can romance a girl. And he can fight a little bit. And here are all the things that he can do. So they were basically just doing like audition tapes almost for the audience at that point. And then if it worked, then other producers would be like, all right, fine, I'll take you in my movie. But with Hrithik, it was like, here's my son, and he's a fucking star. And with like what you were saying about Harman, Sujoy, he wanted to be a star. Like, he didn't want like a launch into the industry per se. He was looking to be like the next Hrithik. He wanted to be a star. And that's what you see with like all these other kids that have come up since then. They're not really thinking about making movies. Like, you talk to, like, if you listen to like Sunny Deol talking about like what it was like, Sunny actually went to London to study acting. He's given all these interviews around that time about like how he grew up watching world cinema, because apparently Dharmendra was bringing back all these tapes of like Italian cinema or something, and I'm just like, what? What even is that? But apparently, like, they were, like all of these people, like, they wanted to make movies. Like, Salman was sitting there writing all these scripts that he wanted to direct. And that's how he started out. Like, he went out trying to find people that would back him, and then they just wouldn't. Whereas with all these kids, they just want to be, Salman or Shah Rukh or Hrithik or whoever. So it's a very different mindset with these kids, I think.
Yeah. Can anyone who can, Amrita, maybe can you give a synopsis of what happens in Maine Pyar Kiya? Like, I'm looking one on IMDb, and I looked on one on Wikipedia, and it's like 7 pages long. So, like, can you give us like a short version for the people that haven't seen Maine Pyar Kiya?
Okay, so there's like two friends, and they're besties, or they used to be besties, but one of them went away to the city and became like this big shot. And he's got a wife who kind of remembers what it was like when they were poor, but they were honest and principled or whatever. And they've got a son. And the plan was that, so the poor best friend has a daughter, and he gets a job somewhere else, and he needs to go somewhere. So he comes to his big important friend in the city and says, hey, can my daughter bunk at your house while I'm away making money? And his old friend isn't all that keen on him, because now he's big and important, and he's got, like rich friends. But he allows the girl to stay in his house. And his wife loves this girl because she's very simple and lovely and sweet. And his son eventually falls for her as well. And then he finds out, and he basically calls her a gold digger and says that his old friend has sent his daughter to kind of get her hooks into his son so that they can inherit all his money. And his friend gets really mad and takes his daughter and goes back home. And then his son turns around to him and says, wow, you're a dick, and I love that girl, and I don't want to be here with you. And his wife turns to their son and goes, take these bangles, go get my daughter home. And he goes off to get this girl, but now her dad is like super angry and is like, you're just some spoiled kid who can't even support my daughter unless he's got daddy's big bucks behind him. So you need to go and find a job and get me X amount of money in a month to prove to me that you can support my daughter. And if you can do that, then I will let you marry my daughter. And so this kid goes off and he works for a month and gets into trouble with all the local goons and everything. But he manages to get the money, and then by that time, like, his daddy comes with all his horrible rich friends, and there's like a big fight, and then things end happily, and honesty and integrity and love win the day.
Yeah. So it's a very kind of different plot. Like, even when you kind of tell the story, like, you try to summarize it, it's not like just simple boy meets girl, and it almost feels like a very different setup to what Qiyaamat Se Qiyaamat Tak was, and that almost feels like a very Romeo Juliet kind of template, whereas it feels like Maine Pyar Kiya actively wants to break that template or enhance upon it. And
I love how you did not forget the bangles.
The bangles are important, man. Like, there's an entire song where he's like aggressively singing with the bangles in his fist.
And moonwalking in total angst.
It's angry moonwalking, yeah.
I love that song so much, like Dil Deewana, like where he is like singing at Alok Nath. And he like there's a point where he's like so angry he like throws open the gate to their farm, and then Alok Nath is like looks at him because he's told him not to enter the farm, and he moonwalks back
and he just closes the door.
And then like he's at this temple. I don't even know why they're at this temple, and then she shows up and he's like singing this song angrily, still holding onto the bangles. And then she does this weird dance. Like I don't even know how to describe that dance that she does.
So I watched this episode of Dance Champions today where Salman and Katrina came to promote the Tiger Zinda Hai, and Salman just talked about that moonwalking. So he had to basically train for 15 long days because it would not come out of him. Like he trained day and night for 15 days to get that imperfect shot of moonwalking. And Katrina calls it bunny hopping.
No, but what was also funny is that nobody explained to Bhagyashri what moonwalking was, and she had never seen any clip of Michael Jackson actually moonwalking, so she just kind of walks backwards.
Yeah.
She just kind of like slips backward, and nobody takes like a minute to explain to her what she's supposed to be doing.
And there's this sort of half ashamed sort of pelvic thrust that she does in the middle.
Yeah. All right, yeah. I think that was supposed to be like sexy or something like that. I don't know what it like. I don't know.
And it's all taking place in a temple. She faints.
Yeah, she faints too, right? Yeah.
And the pigeon is also on his hand, right?
And he keeps throwing the pigeon. He keeps throwing the pigeon at Alok Nath. When I say he throws the pigeon, I mean like he's got it clutched in his hand and he just like throws it like a baseball.
Yeah, normally in a movie you have that little disclaimer, no animals were harmed shooting this movie. I didn't see any disclaimer on this one because I'm sure a lot of pigeons got killed on this one, like a lot of doves and pigeons and kabooters.
Oh.
But
it was the 90s, man. Or the 80s, late 80s. Yeah. They didn't care about animal rights.
So let's bring it back because we're all over the place now because this is what's going to happen. But let's bring it back to the core. Like, let's bring it back to Salman. Now, like, when he came out with Maine Pyar Kiya, it's not the Salman that we know now. How was it for you guys, like, revisiting and seeing him in this little scrawny, big-eyed, fully motivated, on board, this is my chance to make it Salman Khan revisiting?
I think because of the context of Khandaan podcast, we were watching all the three debut movies of the Khans, Amir in Qiyamat Se Qiyamat Tak, Shah Rukh in Deewana, and Salman here. I think out of the three, Salman is the better actor in the first movie. I don't know why. Maybe he was exposed to all sorts of film sets experience where he has seen many actors act, or I'm not sure how he picked that up, but he just seems more natural in the scenes that he was doing when he's not, he's crying in front of Alok Nath or rebelling against his dad or being, romantic with Bhagyashri. In all of those, he just feels more natural out of all three. I really liked his chemistry with Bhagyashri, and I think what I remember of Maine Pyar Kiya is the poster of Maine Pyar Kiya where Salman is standing topless in his jeans and Bhagyashri is on his feet, and that it's kind of like an iconic poster because I remember that pasted all across town when Maine Pyar Kiya was released, and this was, I think, we hadn't seen any sort of image of a Bollywood star being all muscly, and Khalayak hadn't released then, so you didn't have the Bollywood guy, totally topless. I mean, as in their first movie, like Dharmendra and Dara Singh were probably there in their prime, but that's the kind of image that I remember of Maine Pyar Kiya, and you see a lot of scenes where he's like doing single-handed push-ups and everything, fitness has been a quite a key element in all of Salman's movies where he takes his shirt off. So I think that began with Maine Pyar Kiya and spiraled down to whatever it is now.
I think the two of them are like so charming together. Like they're so untutored compared to the kind of debuts that we see today in Bollywood. Like the two of them, the way they're acting, the way they're so raw in everything that they're doing. And you can see like Salman is almost vibrating with the need to do something in every single scene. And you can kind of see that especially in like the songs, because it's this thing that we'll see, we'll talk about with Shah Rukh as well, where sometimes they've just got so much energy, like he and Salman at this point in their careers, they both have like so much energy that they're not even dancing. They're just doing like acrobatics. Like Salman's doing cartwheels and he's doing jumping jacks. He does push-ups every so often for no good reason in the middle of his songs. And he's almost like, he's so present in every single scene of this movie that it's kind of shocking to just sort of compare that to the person that he eventually became, where, his idea of dancing is to stick his hand in his pocket and then wiggle it around. So it's night and day. Salman Khan on the make in Maine Pyar Kiya, having his one big shot at stardom. But it's very earnest and it's very pure. I like it.
Do you have memories of this when this movie came out, Amrita? Or when you first saw it initially?
Yeah, but not as strong as QSQT, because my cousin was a little older when Maine Pyar Kiya came out, and she wasn't as obsessed with it as she was with QSQT, because she was her whole thing with QSQT was actually Juhi Chawla.
Right.
So with this, I just remember a lot of things about Bhagyashree, actually. It wasn't really Salman that I remember associating with this movie. Because with Bhagyashree, there was this weird, even as a child, I thought it was just really weird that they had this whole narrative about how she's royalty and how she's married to a man called Himalaya, who's also royalty. And then there was this whole thing where she and Himalaya, her husband apparently didn't want her to act with anybody other than him, except he couldn't act. But then all these producers signed up to let them make movies together, and they were just terrible. And that's what I remember.
Yeah, banking on the popularity of Bhagyashree, they cast Himalaya in a few movies that were horrible and terrible. I remember that too. And it was funny because you never had kind of an actress that was immediately married, and especially with after such a big hit, so it was kind of an odd situation. And I think even when I was going through the making of and when they did Hum Aapke Hain Kaun 20 years kind of revisit when they were doing Prem Ratan Dhan Payo. There's really good in-depth interviews with Salman and Sooraj Barjatya on YouTube. So if people haven't checked that out, maybe they should. But they talk a little bit. It's mostly about Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, but they talk a little bit about Maine Pyar Kiya too. And Himalaya was very much involved even in this movie, and there's a lot of scenes that he forced the director to change because he didn't want Bhagyashree to wear this or act this way or do this or dance that way. Which
yeah, the scene in I Am Awesome Dosti Ka, where he draws the lipstick on the mirror, that was changed from an actual kissing scene because Himalaya objected to it.
Yeah. And also the reveal of her dress, where that is also changed, that they cut it off. But I think it's just funny because I think those are the scenes that kind of make the movie iconic, or kind of, I don't know if it would have been I think at that time, if they'd actually shown people kissing in that movie, I don't know if it would have probably created more shock, and that would have taken the movie to a different kind of level, where here it was so pure and innocent that I don't know, it really it was kind of a wholesome movie for all of the family to watch. It wasn't that, so I think it was kind of, even having that restrictions kind of worked for them at the end.
All I can think is that Iranian cinema has like censorship problems. That's why they come out with great art. And in India, you have angry fiancés who dictate what the heroine should wear.
Yeah.
And that's how we get our great cinema.
Yeah. Or think of it like the Dogma 95 guys, right? Maine Pyar Kiya did it first, yeah. So my memory is a weird one because I saw this on VHS in Belgium, and I came after school, and my mom was already watching the movie. And at that time, I was like purely an Amitabh fan, so I didn't really care of any other movies except Amitabh. So she just kind of watched it without me. I came in and Dil Divana was playing, the angry song, and Salman was just kind of jumping from one bench to the other bench. And like, I think like cinematically or however you wanted, it was love at first sight. I was like, who is this guy? Like, what is he? Who is he? Why am I so like hypnotized watching this guy? And the magic still works, honestly, when Maine Pyar Kiya, when you watch it again, it brings me back to that time. I mean, the way he's shot, the way he's such a live wire, like Amrita is saying, and just the way they kind of focus on his huge, big eyes. He was just such a breath of fresh air, and he just made you even forget about Amir Khan, I feel. His poster was on every wall. The songs were massive. Bhagyashree was beautiful. She was such a big star, and there was almost this feel of tragedy connected with it, that she got married and she couldn't star in any other movies. But yeah, Salman is like you said, just kind of taking the shirt off, doing push-ups, jumping from one bench to the other, and also his comedic delivery, his relationship with his mom. I mean, we're making fun of the bangle scene, but it is still effective, I feel. And even that line he has where he says ke ulta shave karke raja coat pehanta hu to bahut dashing lagta hu, those are like the delivery of that kind of line, and I don't think anything in Qayamat Se Qayamat has that. And just it's kind of like lightning in a bottle, Maine Pyar Kiya. And although I was even still a bit too young to understand the aspects of romance and love and what actually the themes are, it just on star power alone, this movie just captivated me. And I think I think that's kind of the strength. I don't think any launch of the Khans has been this successful like Maine Pyar Kiya. I mean, clearly you can see it in the numbers of how much this movie is still loved, how much it sold, how much business it did. But just on pure merit, pure quality of movie, performances, setting, I think this is kind of head and shoulders above anything else at that time.
I think between QSQT, Maine Pyar Kiya and Divana, like Maine Pyar Kiya is a winner by a mile and a half.
I have to say, the house that they are living in has the weirdest architecture I've ever seen. I could not understand how this house was built. Apparently there's like a stair that goes up, then there's like a huge kind of a open space, and people are smoking and nobody can figure out that where the smoke is coming from. But they're also playing like jazz saxophone, and that's also fine. Like angry jazz saxophone. So
Salman is riding his bike inside the house.
Yeah, there's people are riding bikes, they're doing push-ups, they're doing boxing. Like, what is this house? Is this
also all the doors have like glass in them, so there's no privacy, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on?
Have you ever seen this kind of architecture, or this kind of, let's say, set design in any other movies to that level? Because everything is so important also, right? The way the set is made, it has kind of an effect on the story of it. And I don't think anybody had put that much effort in set design, unless it's some sort of historical set, right? Like Rajkumar or Mughal-e-Azam or stuff like that. But it almost feels like that kind of precision and detail to a contemporary young love story, which I had honestly never seen.
I'm almost like 90% certain that the house where they have the party where she almost gets raped by Monish Bail?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the same house as the one in which in Divana, where Kajal and her mother-in-law live.
Yeah, is that also not the Andaz Apna Apna house, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like that's a house that's been just recycled all throughout the 80s and 90s.
We cannot exclude Andaz Apna Apna in any of our podcast episodes. Like it tries, we try and try, but it just seeps in somehow.
Yeah, I think people will just have to live with it. It's going to happen. Every episode will have like a hidden
reference to Andaz Apna Apna.
Actually, I'm just kind of going through the year of 1989, and if this was kind of the biggest hit, I mean, 1989 was a good year for movies. Chandni came out, Parinda came out, Ram Lakhan came out, Tridev came out, Joshile came out, Chalbaz came out in 1989, Main Azad Hoon, Tufan, Amir Khan's Love, Love, Love and Raak both came out, which is like clearly Amir Khan was not able to bank on the success of his debut. Yeah, tons of good movies came out. Even Nigahein, Nagina Part 2 came out. I like that movie. I
have a funny thing to add to the whole Maine Pyar Kiya VHS episode. So if you remember when VHS were released, they were sometimes released in 2 VHS tapes because the movie is really long, and this is like 3 hours plus.
Yeah.
Maine Pyar Kiya somehow got edited into 1 VHS tape, and the like you said, you had complete portions being edited out, and you didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, I had never seen the Monish Bail rape scene. I did not know that there was a kind of like a rape in this movie. I did not know until like last week.
And like there was the whole Antakshari song. I never got to know of it when I initially watched it at the in my neighbor's house when we watched it on the VHS. So like many years later when it came on Doordarshan, and I finally got to see like, oh, they actually filmed the Antakshari song. It's not just for the cassette. I was like blown away, and I was like, okay, so they released like a director's cut or something.
Director's cut.
Imagine.
I also had a cassette which had all the songs of Maine Pyar Kiya, like a VHS, just the songs, so not the story.
Oh, wow.
And we just used to constantly just watch the movie that way. We just watch the songs, and you get pretty much the whole flow of the story. And you don't even actually need anything. Just the songs tell you the entire story.
So for us, it was just the guy that owned the video parlor. So we used to live in a sort of gated community, and we had like a video parlor inside the community. And he also ran the cable service, except we didn't have like actual cable until much later. So there was no Star Plus, there was no Channel V, there was nothing. There was just this guy, and it was this sort of closed circuit cable service, and he would just program it himself. So he would just put on like whatever he felt like watching. So it was like, like we had like movies that would start at like 10 in the morning, and then there would be like something throughout the day. There would be like 2 movies until like evening. So there'd be 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and then in the evening it would be like an English film, and then at night it would be porn. So it would be like full service sort of.
I mean, porn is a big word for what it was, though, right? Like,
I don't know, because I never got to watch it because the TV was in the living room and I had to be in bed. So I just knew that there was like stuff happening.
Stuff was happening.
Sometimes it would just be like an R-rated English film, and then he would be like, well, that's close enough. Like somebody somewhere would show their titties, so that would work.
Yeah, that was it.
But yeah, so I actually saw the director's cut, as Sujoy would say, of all the movies, because he had like all the versions, and it didn't matter if it was like 4 hours long, because it was his channel and he could do whatever he wanted to do with it.
But if you look at the other movies that came out, it is still kind of very striking that Salman and Amir were pretty much the only young stars out there. From the major releases, it was all, still Amitabh, Dharmendra. I think even Clerk came out in 1989. So it was really like a lot of, you basically could only see old men on cinema, and I can't even imagine the impact it must have had to, see somebody for young people going to the cinema and seeing somebody like, their age. Even like, I think in the 1990s, the year after, slightly things started to change. And then Shah Rukh had more Amir had more releases, Dil came out, Salman was doing more movies, and they were kind of established. But still, Maine Pyar Kiya is the only movie with kind of, a hero under 45 years old, which is insane when you think about it, right? So what do you, like, we spoke a bit about the relationship between Salman and Bhagyashri. And I mean, it is corny, right? It's a kind of a very corny, very innocent kind of love story, but it is still very cute, right? They have a little, the first time they meet is actually in a toilet. they have like a toilet meet cute.
But how poetic is that Salman's introduction scene when he's coming back from America? They never mention where in America though. Just like he went to America to study, like the whole country. But and also they never mention where the Chaudhary family lives, but they just mention Sheher mein, like Gaon and Sheher and America. So very generic. But like the introduction scene of Salman driving, like the introduction scene is him driving and he's like zooming past everyone else and he's drinking thumbs up. It's just very, very poetic of how things panned out for him.
I think it's also funny that, that difference between Sheher and Gaon. And Aloknath is like, he's totally fine when he's in the Gaon, but when he comes to the Sheher, he becomes even more Gaon wala. Like his accent changes, his mannerism changes, he loses like all sensibilities. But when he's in his village, he's kind of a normal dude. Like he talks normally. He has an understanding of what money is and where the boundaries are. But when he comes to the Sheher, he just loses and he becomes like a total village bumpkin. It's hilarious to see. Well, what did you kind of think of the rest of the parental crew of Aloknath, Reema Lagoo, and the third guy, Salman's dad, that I never know the name of?
Yeah, I mean, Reema Lagoo's like lovely, and she basically plays the exact same character in every single Barjatya film. Yeah. And also in like other films, like in Kal Ho Na Ho, she was basically the same character. So yeah, I mean, she's lovely. Actually, the guy that played Salman's dad, he had like a lot to do, and he actually did like a good job of it. I think we never talk about him because we always talk about Reema Lagoo and Aloknath, but that guy actually did a pretty good job.
And Ajit Vachani and all that. But when you have that scene of Aloknath coming back from his job, and he's got all this money and he's back to take back his daughter, and he realizes what's happening, and he has that sort of monologue, sort of scenery chewing scene. He just goes for it. It's just like so much melodrama happening in this one scene where everybody else is silent and he's just Aloknath delivering line after line and his veins are popping.
What about Lakshmikant Berde and the whole romantic track that he had going on with the Dudwali?
I hate the comedy subtext all the Barjatya movies because it always is so freaking classist and weird and inappropriate, and it's always like vaguely rapey and gropey and molesty, and I just don't like it. Yeah, and also like like every single time they have one of these little the supporting character love story, I can't help but notice like the way they dress the woman. Like in Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, in all of those, like I don't even know what that mess is. Like it's some sort of like soft core dressing. Like it's just gross.
I totally agree. Like like Gulabia, the Dudwali's role, or the professor's daughter's role in Hum Aapke Hain Kaun. It sort of serves the purpose of like, okay, here's the naughty part. Here's where we bring in the the titillation. Everything else is clean. sort of thing, and I don't really get why they need to blend that into the narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. It's not something that I liked, and honestly, I'm not even a fan of the whole Lakshmikant Berde, Johnny Lever kind of thing. It was never my thing. I think if it really drags the movie down, and it really never really works for me. But he was a huge star in Marathi cinema or something like that. Is that correct?
Yes.
I guess I've never seen his stuff. I've seen more of like what's the other guy, the father in Hum Paanch.
Oh right.
Ashok Saraf.
Right.
Yes, I've seen more of his stuff and Johnny Lever rather than Lakshmikant Berde.
Yeah. What about the villain ki toli? The Monish Bail and Seema, played by Parveen Dastur. I think that's her name from IMDb. What I'm getting.
Like, what kind of a house party was that?
Oh my God.
Seriously, what kind of a house party was that? And they just decided to have a fight in the living room with all the chicken dishes plated out next to each other. I was like, no, all the food's gonna get wasted. No. And they really poured all the chicken on the carpet.
No, so I think we need to kind of set the setting, right? This is the scene where Salman and Bhagyashree are finally getting closer, but they've not really told each other that they're in love or something like that. They go to a party. There's a slight Monish Bail is trying to kill a dove, right? Or a pigeon. Is it a dove or a pigeon?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a dove.
Yeah. So he's trying to shoot this dove. Bhagyashree kind of saves the dove. And while Salman is distracted, Monish Bail kind of tries to rape her, right? And then when Salman saves her, everybody starts shouting "hip hip hooray." Is that that's kind of the setting of the song, right? Of the scene.
And that scene is like one of the most iconic scenes in Hindi cinema, because Monish Bail then makes a speech about how a boy and a girl can never be friends. But does anyone remember the dialogue? Because I feel like it is an amazing piece of dialogue.
I think it goes something like "Ek ladka aur ek ladki ka bhi dost
nahi ho sakte." Yeah, that's all.
And the line after that. ये तो एक what? ये तो एक बहाना है. Something जिस्म को छुपाने का, or something like that. It's like, it's an amazing piece of dialogue that I'm sorry I don't have it memorized.
But I have to say, Monish Bail pulls like a Donald Trump level of misdirection. He was the one raping a girl, but he kind of flips around the situation and everybody's making fun of Bhagyashree and Salman. And then there is kind of a very Bruce Lee inspired Enter the Dragon fight between Monish Bail and Salman Khan between a lot of chicken korma.
Oh, I have the dialogue, by the way. Can I just read it out?
Please do.
I can't do it as well as Monish Bail, but I feel like everybody should know this dialogue. ये तो एक पर्दा है पर्दा, कप कपाती रातों में धड़कते हुए दिलों की भड़कती हुई आग को बुझाने का.
Oh my God.
All-time greatest piece of dialogue ever.
That is epic.
कप कपाती रातों में
धड़कते हुए दिलों की भड़कती हुई आग को बुझाने का.
Wow. I can't even process all of that.
I remember watching that piece of dialogue, and for the longest time, that was like my one biggest, clearest memory of this movie was just that piece of dialogue. I could forget everything else, but I would be like, I remember that little monologue that Monish Bail had in Maine Pyar Kiya.
And apparently his mom, Nutan, who's also a legendary actress, didn't want him to do this role because she felt he would get typecast as a villain. And the Barjatyas convinced her that, he has scenes and he has a role that people will never forget. So, Yeah, I think Amrita, he definitely left a mark on you. So Nutan's fear were unfounded.
The dialogue is written by Sooraj Barjatya, man.
Oh wow!
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
On one hand, it's like dosti mein no thank you, no sorry, and then there's like dhadakti hui raaton mein kap kapati whatever.
But yeah, he stole that dialogue when he was on the set of Om Shanti Om, right? I think.
Bharat Mata.
Bharat Mata. Farah Khan, we love you.
We really do.
Yeah, I think I just kind of want to talk a little bit about the second half of the movie here, because I think parents not agreeing with the relationship and then lovers getting together and then usually dying or getting together, one or the other, is kind of the usual template. But what this movie really does is add this new layer, which makes the movie a lot longer, but also makes it so much more interesting. And I think when you were summarizing it, that he says, a lot of it is Alok Nath's anger towards how he was treated by Salman's dad, and I think there's a lot of in there too. But there's also the fact that Salman says the line, can you judge me on my own merit and not what my dad did to you? And that's kind of the catalyst to what Alok Nath says, that, okay, let's judge you now. Without your dad, without his money, without his support, who are you? Can you even, provide a roof for my daughter? Can you even, give her do waqt ki roti? And that kind of sends the spiral. And it is kind of very harsh, but it's also very understandable, as a parent, that he's not, love cannot only feed you, right? Otherwise you end up dying or, end up kind of in a non-sanitary village like Amir Khan and Juhi Chawla, where I'm still not over that lack of toilet, by the way. So, I think it's just very interesting because Salman he's in this village where he cannot use any of his yuppie skills. Maybe he has like a business administration degree from America, but he can definitely not use it in this village. So every privilege and entitlement he has is now lost. And he's basically driving trucks. He's, I don't know what he's doing on that rock quarry. Rock quarry is also kind of a recurring theme in Salman Khan cinema. Karan Arjun has a big thing on a marble quarry. So anyway, I just found that really, really interesting, how he kind of makes the village love him for his privileged ass, which I thought was a very interesting, and still it for me it really works, that part of the movie. How does that work for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an unreasonable demand. Like, if he is serious about having left his father and his father's business behind, then he'll need to support his wife somewhere. It is a little unreasonable to be like, can you make your living as a daily wage laborer, when the guy obviously has like an advanced degree and could probably find a job somewhere, in like a big company. But yeah, I mean, he's not being he is getting his pound of flesh. Let's not get it twisted. But he's also being a responsible dad. So it's fine. And also it gives Bhagyashree and Salman plenty of scope to cry and look longingly towards each other and be all romantic.
And knit professional sweaters, like machine class sweaters. Sujoy, man, how did the second half work for you?
It's just like the first time I watched it, I think I don't have really good memories of what I felt then. But when I rewatched it the other day, I was quite surprised, because the movie, you would think that the movie would end at a certain point, and it didn't, and it takes a newer direction. And even though that you have watched this movie so many times, you still are surprised that, oh, they took this route, and then Alok Nath does this, and the movie still doesn't end. And I think I like the the thing that they did and the choices that they made with the story, and the second half was good, I guess. Also gives a chance for more songs to be put into the narrative, and definitely we would have missed the bunny hopping, moonwalking song.
So let's wrap it up. Like, by the way, what is your favorite song on the soundtrack? And are you okay with all the just blatant plagiarism?
I'm okay with it as long as it's a good copy, I guess, and I really like Aaja Sham Hone Aayi and I Am Awesome Dosti Ka,
which I think aren't ripped off, right? Those two songs. I mean, I'm making a big thing of it, but I don't think Kabutar Ja 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 is a rip off. I don't think Dil Deewana is even a rip off, right? It's basically Aate Jaate and Mere Rang Ne Mein.
Mere Rang Mein,
Yeah.
So Mere Rang Mein is actually my favorite song from that movie. And the first time I heard it, I knew I knew right off the bat that the title song was ripped off.
Yeah.
Aate Jaate, I knew immediately that was ripped off. But I didn't know about the others until I got a little older. And I feel like it should affect the way I remember that soundtrack, but I still have a lot of fondness for it. So I guess in the end, I feel the same as Sujoy. I'm fine with it.
And
Steal away.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just steal away.
And I also think Mere Rang Ne, it just has that little theme that's ripped off. The rest of the song is still... It's still an original composition, right? I mean, I'm not super musical minded, but so Sujoy, what was your favorite song? Sorry,
I Am Awesome Dosti Ka and Aaja Sham Hone Aayi.
Right. Yeah, that's so good, huh? I like that song too.
Yeah.
It's just the picturization of it. And
exactly. I mean, the song is totally enhanced by the things that are going. It's like a conversation kind of a song, which... And then all the drama that is going on screen, it's really good.
Yeah. And I love the idea of Salman Khan's date with Bhagyashree. It's like three racks of Coca-Cola. He was fully prepared for that date, man. He got really pissed off. I think one of the big things that for me stood out is that SP Bala's voice on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
I'd honestly not heard his voice before this soundtrack, and it's still so powerful. It's so good, and there was a whole period in the early Salman Khan career where SP Bala was pretty much Salman's voice, right? And you just kind of connected Salman and SP Bala together. They had tons and tons and tons of hits until I think SP Bala stopped singing in Hindi. I think that's kind of one of the reasons why this song was so good. I don't know if Lata Mangeshkar's voice suits that well with Bhagyashree, but I think at that time people just kind of thought Lata had a very young voice, but I never agreed with that. I just never thought any of those voices suited Bhagyashree, the younger actresses. But yeah, they keep pushing it. I think on revisiting, my favorite song now was actually Kahe To Sajni, the one that Sharda Sinha is singing. So it's shot on Bhagyashree when Salman is doing all this manual labor. It's just so different from all the other songs. It's really stood out, and I love the voice, and I hadn't heard it in ages. And yeah, I just love a woman that can knit a sweater in 30 minutes. Professional cars. The knitting skills of Bhagyashree. She's a professional knitter and a badminton champion, so plus she does a really good moonwalk. So what else do you need? So that one kind of stood out, but yeah, all the other songs, it's a really good soundtrack still. I love it. Even the Antakshi song is so much fun,
I'm so surprised that people in their 90s were so Bollywood literate. You would name all the songs. You imagine you were only dependent on Doordarshan or your VHS tapes for your Bollywood sources.
Yeah.
And then you are knowing the length and breadth of Bollywood, all the songs and the lyrics, and you know which letter the song begins with and ends with and all that, and associate it in a game. And
It actually doesn't surprise me at all because I remember do you remember Chitrahar? Everyone
I do.
like people were obsessed because it was just in such short supply. Like people would just I remember like every Friday we used to have so Chitrahar Asim was like
what's
basically
Chitrahar? I was going to ask you.
So on Wednesdays and Fridays at 8 p.m. there used to be a show for half an hour where we used to be shown like the 5-minute song of movies from like the yesteryears to the new ones. So they used to pick and Doordarshan was the only channel in India then. So yeah, that was our only source of weekly entertainment.
Right. Okay.
And the other thing that we used to have was like the radio, I guess. And there used to be like Binaka Geetmala and all that.
Binaka,
kind of
yeah, I love.
Yes, Amin Sayani.
Yeah, he was so big in Pakistan, guys. You cannot Amin Sayani was like he was the boss, like crazy, like
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy when you think about it, right? Like, because what is he, a radio compare? I think that's basically what you can call him, right?
Yeah.
And his voice used to sell cassettes. It's insane. Like, it was more about almost his voice than the songs on the cassette. But when Amin Sayani was doing the compare, you would just get the cassette without even thinking twice, which is insane. Like, I had this one Amin Sayani cassette about Amitabh. Again, I'm a huge Amitabh fan. I'll keep on saying this. So I had this one about Amitabh's career. And so he used to talk about the Coolie accident and how people were kind of waiting in line, and they had the heartbeat of I think Kalia or Coolie in the background. And I used to cry. Like every time I used to hear like Amin Sayani's voice was so powerful. I used to actually believe Amitabh was in hospital while I'm listening to it. It's I don't think it's a phenomenon we can even explain to people at this time, right? I mean, you can say he was a DJ, but not really, right?
He was everything. He was the mouthpiece of Bollywood back then.
Yeah. So it was a huge thing. The soundtrack was a huge thing. So yeah, let's kind of put it on like our three level scale, right? We have what did we have? Nostalgia, we have fandom, and is it still a good movie? So Amrita, maybe you can go first.
sorry, what was the question?
Like how does it score on nostalgia? How does it score on Salman Khan fandom? And how does Maine Pyar Kiya score on is it still a good movie?
Yeah, I think it's still a good movie. But it's a really good movie if you're patient with things being a bit raw. Like if you are expecting something that's a bit more polished, then maybe this isn't the movie for you. Like I feel like QSQT was probably a more polished movie in some ways, but this is the better movie in a lot of other ways. I feel on a nostalgia level, it's an absolute 10. And in a fandom level, so if you are the kind of Salman fan that likes him being like the bhai of Bollywood, then this is not the movie for you. Like he's definitely not being a bhai. He's just an earnest, sweet, chocolatey hero. So I don't know if the modern day Salman Khan fan would find it appealing. Definitely the kind of people who are but the Salman fan is also kind of weird in that they like Salman in like a lot of different ways. So maybe it might work. I don't know. I don't really understand Salman fans in a lot of ways. So I don't know is the answer to most of your questions. It's a very good film and I like it and I would recommend it on like a cinema level.
Great. Sujoy?
Nostalgia, yes, definitely, because it's got all the greatest hits of the 80s and it's got lots and lots of pop culture references, and there's a fucking Antakshari song, for fuck's sake. Salman Khan, yes, you would love it if you're a Salman Khan fan. If you're not a Salman Khan fan, you would still love it because it's a great movie.
And it's still good, obviously, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, nostalgia level is high, but I have to say it's more personal nostalgia than nostalgia of the time itself. Like, I think when I was watching Qiyaamat Se Qiyaamat Tak, it really reminded me so much of late 1980s. Whereas here, because Maine Pyar Kiya is in such a contained kind of world, you still have the Dunhill cigarettes or the certain fashions, but it's less, I feel, than in Qiyaamat Se Qiyaamat Tak, where they were really in the city and in these places. I mean, in terms of fandom, I mean, this is Salman Khan golden age, right? Which goes on for a couple of years. I think he's great. I think he has the best debut of all of three of them. I think the movie holds up. I think he's magnetic on screen, and Amrita doesn't understand me because I am one of those fanboys that she doesn't understand. I absolutely love this movie, and I think not only for Salman. I think on the third meter, it's just a really good movie. It was so fresh, and even like when I was talking about all the other movies that came out, it was just totally different from everything else that came out. So I think just for that, it is one of the classics. I mean, it's one of the best movies ever made in India, I would say. If it's not in the top 10, it's maybe in the top 20, but it's definitely in the top something. It's really good. I think that's it for Maine Pyar Kiya, at least. So every episode, again, to kind of explain, when these debut years are done, so we have one more, which is Shah Rukh Khan's episode, then we're going to start pulling out random years from 1988 to 2017, and every year we'll let our listeners pick which movies of the Khans we will be discussing. So we picked out 2001 for the first episode, the first non-debut episode. In 2001, we had Shah Rukh Khan with Ahsoka. Is it Ashoka or Ahsoka?
Either.
Okay.
Either.
Ahsoka, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham. Amir came out with Dil Chahta Hai and Lagan, and Salman came out with Chori Chori Chupke Chupke. So we'll let the voters decide which way they want to go, and then that way we'll pick the movie with the most votes, and we will review it on the show. So that's it for this episode 2 of Khandaan. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. Subscribe to us, leave us a review, share with your friends. We're still a new podcast, so it would be great to kind of spread the word if you like this. Amrita, where can people find more of you online?
You can find me on Twitter at AmritaIQ.
I'm on Twitter at @93K.
Great. And I'm at Asim Bernie. You can follow us at YouPodcasting, or you can drop us an email at youpodcasting@gmail.com. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll be we'll be back very soon with a new episode.
Khandaan podcast for the execrable.